I'm not a Washington insider, even though I grew up here in D.C. My view on politics is much more grassroots oriented. It's not old boy network oriented. And so I tend to, come at it a little bit stronger, a little bit more streetwise, if you will. That's rubbed some feathers the wrong way.
Republican Party Chairman Michael Steele this morning trying to rub some feathers back the right way. To move on from last week's very bad headlines, right before he got hit with today's very bad headlines. Last week, a week ago today, it was the conservative website Daily Caller that broke the story that the Republican Party spent nearly $2,000 of its donors' money at a bondage-themed sex show nightclub in West Hollywood. The money was spent there on RNC business and then reimbursed out of RNC funds. After the article came out last week, Mr. Steele said the funds would be unreimbursed and that a young female staffer would be fired. Then we found out that the daughter of Steele's Republican Party national co-chair was paid $13,000 of Republican donors' money to be a speechwriter. And then we found out that among the RNC's listed expenditures were office supplies that they say they bought at a liquor store and meals that they say they bought at a fancy clothing boutique, Henri Bendel, and a fly fishing tackle shop. Night crawlers. Many of these stories that make the Republican Party under Michael Steele look very, very bad did first appear in conservative publications, and they're full of quotes from anonymous Republican insiders. So in other words, if Michael Steele is getting pushed here, if there's a campaign afoot to leak damaging stuff to make him look bad, it seems to be coming from within the Republican Party. Now, if you're looking for further signs of division among top-tier Republicans, consider also that a group of former Republican Party officials last week announced that they were forming an alternative to the RNC. They publicly called on Republican donors to give funds to them instead of to the party and Michael Steele. Then Sarah Palin tried to distance herself from the RNC as well, demanding very publicly that they take her name off of an RNC fundraising appeal. All that happened in just 1 week. One long week. And now starts week 2. To add to last week's litany, consider also the new news that one of the biggest fundraisers in the whole Republican Party, former Ambassador Sam Fox, has resigned from his post at the RNC. According to, once again, anonymous Republican sources, quoted in Politico, Mr. Fox was, quote, deeply troubled by the pattern of self-inflicted wounds and missteps at the RNC under Chairman Steele. Also today, the chief of staff of the Republican National Committee resigned. His name is Ken McKay. The new chief of staff of the RNC will be the man who ran Michael Steele's unsuccessful Senate campaign in Maryland in 2006. If that is supposed to inspire confidence, consider that after that campaign was over and Mr. Steele lost by more than 10 points, his campaign finance chairman told the feds that Steele's campaign gave $37,000 in campaign funds to a company that was run by Michael Steele's sister. The Steele campaign finance chairman said that to the feds right before he was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison for a multi-million-dollar fraud that was unrelated to the campaign. But wait, there's more. In addition to elevating his old campaign chairman, Michael Steele has also brought on board at the RNC a new special assistant for finance, is the title, a special assistant for finance. At a time when it might really behoove the RNC to be hiring people with spotless reputations as fiscally responsible stewards of other people's money, who does the RNC pick for its new special assistant for finance? They picked a man who was just recently fined thousands of dollars for using donor funds to pay for his own personal expenses. As the Washington Post reports, new RNC fundraiser Neil Alpert was ordered in 2007 to repay more than $37,000 that he was found to have spent improperly while he chaired a political action committee in D.C. Mr. Alpert denied the allegations, but Politics Daily reports today that he did pay a $4,000 fine that was levied against him by the D.C. Office of Campaign Finance. Again, we're still trying to find out if he ever repaid the money he was found to have misappropriated. Money that was supposed to go to inner city kids for things like rehabbing rundown urban playing fields. We think he paid the fine, but we can't figure out if he repaid the tens of thousands of donors' money that was supposed to go to the inner city kids that the D.C. finance folks say he misappropriated. We will let you know what we hear from him if the RNC ever calls us back. All in all, though, week 2 is not turning out to be an improvement on last week in terms of headlines for Michael Steele and the Republican National Committee. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation, with whom I think I'm going to disagree tonight. Hi,
Bring
Chris.
it on.
Woohoo! All right, let's fight. Ready?
Yes.
I think there's no way that Michael Steele survives this. I think he has to resign. You think he won't?
Right. I think he won't. Well, let me say this is not an endorsement of his performance as the head of the RNC, which, as you've laid out quite aptly, is not very good. Here's the reason I think he won't. One is that one of the things I've learned in Washington, it's the Donald Rumsfeld rule, which is that when, after Abu Ghraib, there's all this pressure and this mounting pressure, people start speculating if you're going to resign. If you just refuse to do it, eventually it goes away. I think Michael Steele understands that because I think he's enough of a loose cannon. The other thing that's fascinating about this, and it's actually very similar to some of the dynamics that happened with Howard Dean, is there's two constituencies here. There's the constituencies of the donors who are clearly infuriated, but they're not the one who actually institutionally control his fate. The people that control his fate are the members of the Republican National Committee that are made up of the county chairs, the ones that elected him, and to get rid of him, you'd have to get 2/3 of those people to vote him out. I think Michael Steele understands that basically he's bulletproof, and I think actually from the sort of first-person perspective of Michael Steele, if he's smart, he'll just hang on.
But doesn't it matter who's pushing? I mean, even with just the Rumsfeld example, in that case, you get, moonbats like me, and you get, retired military officers and those people calling for him to step down, and then he just gets to stand firm and look conservative and have people line up behind him. In this case, it seems very clear that the people who are both pushing and pulling Michael Steele are in the upper echelons of the Republican National Committee, which both means they're people who he needs in order to keep doing his job well, because he needs money from them, but they're also people who are in the position of offering him the next job that he gets to go to, so he gets to sort of have a glide landing here.
That's exactly, I think, actually, you put your finger on the crucial issue. How much does Michael Steele care about his next gig? Because if he doesn't care, and if he understands that he kind of has these people over a barrel, because firing him in a really messy way in which he says, I was forced out, makes things really ugly for the Republicans. If he realizes that he has him over a barrel and he doesn't care about his next gig, then he's bulletproof. If he's worried that he's not going to be able to work in this town again, I think you're right. Then they can ease him out. But right now, whatever influence they have over Michael Steele, it is exactly about his next gig. It's not about him as the head of the RNC, because those, however many people there are that are talking smack about him to the papers, they're not the ones that ultimately are going to be able to control his fate.
I think they get him to resign by offering him something sweet, and I think it happens soon, because 7 months from the election is better than 2 months from the election, is better than keeping him there as a huge distraction through the election. But most of all, I'm looking forward to continuing to disagree with you about it and having civil disagreement with you on the air.
That's right.
Thanks,
I won't be shouting.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Chris Hayes is Washington editor of The Nation magazine.